The wind howled like a wounded beast, lashing at his face with sharp, icy needles. The Arctic does not forgive mistakes. It does not tolerate arrogance. It takes its price from everyone who dares to disturb its frozen silence. William Carter fastened the last button on his thermal suit and looked up at the sky, distorted by the blizzard. The sun was barely visible through the thick gray haze, a dim, blurry circle that gave neither light nor warmth. The radio in his pocket crackled. "Dr. Carter, the helicopter is ready. It's time to move out." He briefly confirmed the message and took one last look at the expedition's temporary camp. 6 insulated tents, 2 snowmobiles, and a group of exhausted scientists. The survival of all humanity now depended on their actions. How had it all started? Carter remembered every detail, though at times it felt like everything that had happened in the past few weeks was just a strange, feverish dream. The end of November 2024 had been unusually cold, even for winter. A NATO satellite, conducting routine scans of the most remote parts of the Arctic, unexpectedly detected an anomaly, a strange metal object buried deep under the ice. The initial analysis didn't raise much concern. It was probably just another wreck from a Soviet aircraft lost during the Cold War. Such discoveries had happened before. But when the images landed on William Carter's desk, the renowned marine archaeologist specializing in sunken ships from World War II, he felt an inexplicable unease. The silhouette of the object was unmistakable. It was the shape of a submarine. And not just any submarine, it was a German U-boat, one of those deadly vessels that had terrorized Allied convoys. "That's impossible," Carter whispered, studying the images. "There shouldn't be any German submarines here." He immediately contacted the Naval Archives. The reaction was predictable: complete confusion. There was no record of any German U-boats missing in this sector of the Arctic. Moreover, the Nazi Navy had never officially operated in this region. 3 days after the anomaly was discovered, an international research team was assembled. 6 leading scientists in the fields of marine archaeology, military history, and biology, along with 3 security specialists and 2 pilots. The mission was classified at the highest level. Information about the discovery was not to leave a small circle of trusted individuals. Carter was appointed the leader of the expedition. Before departure, he was called to a closed meeting with representatives of NATO and the Russian Northern Fleet. It was an unprecedented collaboration, a clear sign of how serious the discovery was considered. Dr. Carter, an elderly American admiral, addressed him. "If what you found is truly a German submarine from World War II, then the obvious question is, what was it doing so far from known war zones?" A Russian admiral sitting across from him nodded slowly. And even more importantly, what could it have been carrying that would justify such a dangerous journey? Finding answers to these troubling questions was the true goal of the upcoming expedition into the Arctic wasteland. Within days, a cargo helicopter made a rough landing on a hastily cleared patch of snow. The pilot signaled that he wouldn't wait. The weather was worsening rapidly. They disembarked just 2 miles from the submarine's supposed location. A short distance, but in an Arctic storm, every step was an exhausting struggle. Even before reaching the site, Helena Brooks, the team's biologist, noticed something strange. In the barren Arctic landscape, where life seemed impossible, they were being followed by barely visible shapes moving in and out of the icy mist. Arctic wolves, at least a dozen of them, silently gliding over the snow dunes. They kept their distance, neither attacking nor retreating. "William, this isn't normal," Helena shouted over the roaring wind. "Wolves don't act like this around humans. They either attack or run away." Carter nodded but brushed off the concern. Right now, he was focused on only one thing: the object beneath the ice. After 4 hours of grueling travel, they reached the coordinates. As if on cue, the wind suddenly died down. A haunting silence fell over them, broken only by their heavy breathing. The wolves stopped at the perimeter, forming an almost perfect circle. Their yellow eyes followed every movement of the people without blinking. "Like sentries on duty," muttered one of the security specialists, gripping his rifle nervously. Using a portable radar, the team quickly pinpointed the exact location of the submarine and began digging. The ice gave way surprisingly easily, as if the Arctic itself was helping them uncover its secret. After 8 hours of non-stop work, they exposed part of the hull, and all doubts were gone. Before them lay a Type 9 U-boat, one of the most advanced submarines of the Third Reich. But what shocked them the most was the condition of the vessel. There were no visible signs of damage, no corrosion. The submarine looked as if it had sunk not during World War II, but just a few years ago. It defied all natural laws. By the end of the second day, they had cleared the main entrance hatch. The moment of truth had come. Carter, dressed in a protective suit, slowly opened the heavy metal door with the help of the specialists. The stiff hinges gave way with a long, eerie creak, breaking the dead silence of the Arctic wasteland. The wolves, who had been watching motionlessly all this time, simultaneously raised their heads and let out a haunting, drawn-out howl. Inside the submarine, they were met with a horrific sight. The entire crew, about 50 men, was still at their stations, but they were all dead. Carter, who had seen many sunken ships with deceased crews, had never witnessed anything like this before. The sailors' bodies had not decomposed, had not been affected by seawater or scavengers. They looked as if they had died instantly, frozen forever in their last movements. One officer had his pencil raised over a logbook. Another had a cup held near his lips. A third was reaching for the radio. "My God," Helena whispered, examining the nearest body. "They look like museum exhibits, but that's impossible. No known conditions could preserve organic matter like this." Carter silently moved toward the captain's quarters. He knew that if they wanted to understand what had happened to this submarine, the answers would be found there. The captain's cabin was locked from the inside. They had to use special equipment to force the door open without damaging the contents of the room. The submarine's captain, an aging officer with a gaunt face, sat at his desk. In front of him lay an open ship's log, his hand still gripping a Luger pistol. A bullet had entered his temple. He was the only crew member who had not died from the mysterious cause but by his own hand. As Carter carefully retrieved the log, he felt cold sweat running down his spine despite his thermal suit. He was fluent in German. It was essential in his profession. The captain's final entries at last revealed the horrifying truth. April 28, 1945. We received orders directly from Berlin. Operation Ragnarok. Highest priority classification. No one but me knows the true purpose of our mission. The crew has been told we are evacuating important scientists and documents. The cargo will arrive at night. April 29, 1945. The cargo has been delivered. 6 containers with biological materials from Laboratory Odin. Professor Strauss insisted on personally overseeing them. According to instructions, the materials must be transported to a secret base in Antarctica. If the Allies win, this will be our final weapon of revenge. May 2nd, 1945. A radio message from headquarters. Berlin has fallen. The Führer is dead, but the order remains in effect. We are the Reich's last hope. May 5th, 1945. Professor Strauss is becoming increasingly anxious. He locks himself in the lab for hours. Something is not going according to plan. May 7th, 1945. Disaster. Strauss reported that one of the containers is unstable. He tried to fix something, but my God, what have I done? By agreeing to this mission, I have doomed the entire crew. The effect was immediate. The men simply froze. No convulsions, no agony, just frozen forever, like wax figures. I have sealed myself in my cabin and activated the independent ventilation system, but it is only a delay. The cargo is too dangerous to fall into anyone's hands. I pray that the Arctic ice will forever entomb this submarine and its deadly contents. Forgive us, Lord. Carter slowly closed the journal and looked at Helena, who was standing beside him. The horror of understanding was reflected in her eyes. "We need to evacuate immediately and seal this submarine forever," he said firmly. "This is Nazi biological weaponry, clearly still deadly even after 8 decades. From what we've seen, this terrifying substance could instantly kill millions of people if it were ever released." The security specialist contacted command and transmitted a critical threat code. Within an hour, 3 military helicopters appeared over the excavation site, carrying a team of scientists in the highest grade protective suits. The operation to secure the submarine had begun. The work continued without pause for 3 days. The submarine was thoroughly examined, and the discovered containers with biological material were further sealed and left in place. Any attempt to move them could lead to unpredictable consequences. The entire area was declared a restricted zone under round-the-clock surveillance via satellite and automated monitoring stations. On the final day, when the primary work was finally complete, Helena once again drew Carter's attention to the wolves, who had never left the perimeter for even a moment. "You know, William," she said thoughtfully, "I have a theory. These wolves, they've been guarding this place for decades. Somehow they sensed the danger beneath the ice and instinctively kept other animals from coming near. More than that, they probably scared off any people who might have wandered too close over the years." Carter looked closely at the nearest wolf, a large male with a graying muzzle. The animal met his gaze calmly. There was no fear or aggression in its yellow eyes, only an ancient, unfathomable wisdom. "Do you really think that's possible?" he asked quietly. "There are countless examples of animals sensing danger long before humans. Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. Why wouldn't they be able to sense a biological threat?" Helena shrugged. "These wolves could have passed this knowledge down through generations, staying at a distance from the dangerous place, but not allowing anything living to come near it." When the last of the equipment was loaded and the team was preparing to depart, Carter lingered for a moment at the edge of the camp. The wolf pack was slowly dispersing, resuming their usual positions around the site, where the deadly submarine of the Third Reich now lay, securely hidden beneath a fresh layer of Arctic ice. "Thank you," Carter said softly, addressing no one in particular, just gazing out into the endless, frozen wilderness. In response, the gray-haired leader of the pack turned his head and seemed to nod slightly, as if acknowledging the gratitude. Then he let out a low howl, which was soon joined by the rest of the pack. The sound, ancient as the earth itself, echoed across the silent ice. A reminder that sometimes the most reliable guardians of humanity are not people, but creatures we naively consider primitive and unthinking. Carter could still hear that mournful wolf howl long after the helicopter had lifted high above the wide expanse, carrying the researchers away from one of the most terrifying secrets of the past century. A nightmare that, thanks to a remarkable chain of events and the silent watch of the wolves, had never become the horror of the 21st century.